Ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea. I've got no idea, frankly, why I've been asked to talk to you, but I am, believe me, chuffed to bits to be stood here. A word of warning, even to those of you who've still got things to say to each other at the back. A word of warning, I am going to talk about cycling quite a lot, so some of you might want to leave the room right now. And worse than that, I'm going to talk about ITV quite a lot. And a whole lot more of you might want to leave the room right now. But on the plus side, running will at least get a cursory mention. And swimming will, although it's only there because, frankly, I think some of you might get the hump if I don't mention it at all. And so unusually for a speech by a cycling reporter at a Triathlon Awards Dinner, I'm going to start with this little talk by talking to you about horse racing. Let me explain, because weirdly, that is where my story starts. The last time I was at Sandown Park, ladies and gentlemen, things did not go well. In fact, things turned out decidedly unpleasantly, and I vowed never to return. It was July 1997, and it was also the last time that I have ever had a bet on a horse. I'd just finished a summer working part-time for Ladbrokes, where, ironically, I'd developed a serious gambling habit. Now, things work like this. In order to alleviate the stultifying boredom and the drudgery of sitting behind the till, processing grubby betting slips from the sweaty clutches of hopeless gambling addicts, the only obvious solution was to start betting myself. The irony was that Ladbrokes, being Ladbrokes staff, we were not allowed to place bets with Ladbrokes itself, for obvious enough reasons, but happily enough there was a branch of Corals just 2 doors down the road. So every morning the entire staff of Ladbrokes went down to Corals and placed what amounted to our entire weekly wage packet on various races to be run throughout the day. Now, the entire staff of Corals shortly after that then went to Ladbrokes to place what amounted to all their entire weekly wages on various races throughout the day. It was, without wanting to be too political, a form of tenured labour. That's for the academics amongst you. We sat back and one by one, all of us in our various different betting shops, watched all of our bets lose every single bloody race. This was known as fun, or in other words, a hideous waste of human life. The only slight variation to this daily, tedious routine came when I would try occasionally to amuse my colleagues behind the tills. Sometimes I would pretend spontaneously to snort a line of cocaine in front of the customers, but would hilariously substitute the actual narcotic itself for the contents of a sherbet dib-dab. It is hilarious in a way, but in another way wholly inadvisable in every other respect, and I wouldn't want anywhere here to leave the room tonight with the impression that I advocate the mock snorting of any popular confectionery. But I do digress. I quit Ladbrokes a few months later. The incident with the sherbet dib-dab had confirmed in my own mind that my career, I was 28 at the time, was stagnating a little, and that my degree in modern and medieval languages from Cambridge University wasn't being put to the best possible use. And so began a gloomy period of unemployment, during which my income, such as it was, withered to absolutely fuck all. But problematically, my outgoings kept going up, or out. That's what happens to outgoings. This was largely due to my leaving present from Ladbrokes, which was a compulsive gambling disorder. We lived in a modest flat in Wandsworth, Kath and I. The rent ate all of our cash. She was a newly qualified nurse earning £13,000 a year, I recall. Money, her money in fact, wasn't so much tight as non-existent. It would appear for nanoseconds in our bank account like some highly unstable particle of dark matter in the CERN Hadron Collider. It was in this context that rather unwisely one afternoon, while Kath was busy saving lives and other trivial matters at Roehampton Hospital, that I ended up at Sandown Park, where we are today. I was armed with £60, which had been earmarked to buy the weekly shop. But I had discovered a way of turning it into more money. A horse was due to ride that day called Bosra Sham. Henry Cecil trained it, as far as I remember. Kieran Fallon was due to ride it. It went off 4-7 favourite in the Coral Eclipse race. It carried my 60 pounds. Well, technically it was Kath's actually, but let's call it mine for the sake of poetic licence. In that respect, it carried all I had left. It carried my hopes, my dreams, my future. Perched on its thoroughbred back, atop the shiny leather saddle, teetered my entire life. It finished second. Can I just place on record now my psychotic fear and dislike of Sandown Park, of Kieran Fallon, of Henry Cecil, and of the criminally lazy Bosra Sham, who, if there is any justice in the world, I hope ended up mighty quickly in a tin of pedigree chum. But here is the point, here's the point. So shocked was I by my lack of direction that 2 weeks later I started to work for Sky Sports. Things were actually that bad. I say working, but actually at the time I was just making cups of tea for Jeff Stelling for nothing on a Saturday. Basically, it was just to keep me out of the bookies. But that led to a job, and in September '97 I signed a contract as a production junior on £8,000 a year, ladies and gentlemen, but I was saved. Thank you. It kick-started an outrageously fortuitous and hugely enjoyable career in sports reporting, which has led via World Cup finals, Wembley Way, other bits and pieces, and the Tour de France, significantly, to this very lectern in front of you, scarily impressive people, and a certain number who are still chattering amongst themselves at the back. But I wasn't here to deliver an ill-judged rant against the world of horse racing, although it was quite fun. But put it this way. When I left Sandown Park that day, I never thought that I'd be invited back, and least of all by a glossy and highly excellent triathlon magazine whose name temporarily skipped my memory just then, to talk to a room full of stony-faced athletes thinking, who is this twit? How much longer is he going to carry on rambling on for, and when do I get my bloody prize? Well, I'm coming to that, I promise you. There are times when you feel scarcely qualified to do what you're doing, and most people in a lifetime will experience this uncomfortable sensation just once or twice, and maybe it will have scarred them forever. They will learn from it and vow never to thrust themselves into the spotlight attention of again when they are blatantly unprepared to deal with it. These people, I am sure, just like you, are known as wise people. Self-evidently, I am not among their number. I'm not a wise person. Knowing precious little about the world of the Tour de France when I started in 2003 with ITV never stopped me from just having a go. And now, knowing next to nothing about the world of triathlons isn't going to prevent me from having a go at talking to you about the world of triathlons. So, this much I know, and it won't take long. Firstly, there are lots of you. 100,000 athletes took part in over 800 events last year, and since most extreme endurance athletes either suffer from an alienated adolescence or a burgeoning midlife crisis, otherwise, frankly, there is no bloody point. That's a lot of damaged psychologies on display, all wearing lycra. Secondly, this. British triathletes are, quite frankly, astonishingly good. And while the cycling scene, which I know very well, is finally getting the credit it deserves nationally, the triathlon scene remains criminally underappreciated by the wider British public. Alistair Brownlee's World Championship with his brother Johnny breathing down his neck, monumental performances, as is Helen Jenkins' victory too. Chrissy Wellington's 4th Ironman Hawaii is a measure of her dominance. She can't be with us tonight because it's her mum's 60th birthday. Has she got no respect for Triathlon 220? Sponsored by Ultimate Sports Nutrition. Now, Chrissy has taken a year out to promote her book, A Life Without Limits. In my eyes, this is a regrettable decision in many ways, not least because last time I looked at Amazon, it was just edging out how Cav won the green jersey by Ned Boulting in the Kindle download chart. And to that pool of talent, which includes Stuart Hayes, Liz Batchford, Will Clark, Todd Leckie and Jodie Stimpson, as well as many others, it is clear that this is a sport which is about to explode onto the national scene, especially in this of all Olympic years. So I salute you from the sidelines. and wish you every success for 2012, whether you're eyeing up medals or simply hauling your mediocre backside around some godforsaken, windswept course for no other reason than the fact that you have to finish what you bloody started. Slow. Quick. Abnormally quick. Suspiciously quick. Lance Armstrong quick. I salute you all. Now, I have mentioned the name of Lance Armstrong. His name had to come out, I guess. We in the world of cycling have finished with him, just as he is finished with us. We fell in love, we got married, we gazed at each other over a romantic dinner every now and again, but somehow things grew a bit tired and we bored of each other, frankly. We had a trial separation and then got together again, but all we did was bicker. And now we're just waiting for the divorce to finally come through. And in the meantime, Triathlon World, he's gone to live at your place. Good luck. Just make sure that when he finally moves out, he takes all his stuff with him. Lance Armstrong was one of the first men I ever met in cycling. I had little idea when I was first sent to cover the Tour de France of who he was or what he did. Certainly, I didn't know how he did it, and to this day I think there are plenty of people who would agree that none of us really know how he did it. But that is a separate story. I didn't even know that there were teams on the Tour de France. I was still at the stage when I couldn't understand why the sprinters in the peloton couldn't win the Tour de France. If they were that good, why couldn't they get up the bloody mountains then? But Armstrong, yeah, I got him. Armstrong was immense. In 2003, he was a huge presence on the tour. The media's appetite for him insatiable. I've never witnessed anything like it before or since. Wherever he went, from hotel to team bus, back from the team bus to sign on, from the podium to the team car, mobbed by dozens and dozens, sometimes hundreds of us journalists, thrusting microphones at him, shouting questions, elbowing each other, stamping on each other's toes, tripping over, losing whatever shred of dignity we had, which isn't much, we were journalists. He remained impervious to it all. He was faintly amused. He ruled the roost, a feral, fascinating presence with vicious wit, great articulacy, and a finely tuned sense of how to manage a situation. It was my first tour, 2003, the Centenary Tour. It started with David Miller's chain bouncing off on the cobbles of the home straight in the prologue. He was in the lead. It denied him the yellow jersey, which I, live on ITV1, managed to call the yellow jumper. Remarkably, I escaped the sack. Who says ITV is dumbed down? Anton Deck should bloody do the job, see what they say. 2003, it was the tour of tours. It was an amazing induction for me, a stack of memories. You'll share them, some of you who've watched it. They grow brighter and more vivid with the passing of the time. Joseba Bellocchi crashing on the road to Gap. He was perhaps the greatest threat to Armstrong's hugely significant fifth victory. His tyre burst in the heat, his wheel flipped out from under him at 70 kilometres an hour, probably more. He smashed his pelvis to pieces on the tarmac. Armstrong nervously then off-roaded and cut off that hairpin famously. And then a week or so later, Armstrong fell on the road to Les Ardennes, his handlebar snagging on a spectator's musette, only to remount and thrash every opponent on that mountainside, winning the race with his defining ride of his career. I saw it all, I was there, and I was talking to the riders that day, even before the sweat had dried on their jerseys. God, I was lucky. In 2003, though, we British were just a sideshow. Sure, we had Dave Miller, but as he confesses in his book, Racing Through the Dark, which I can't help noticing has narrowly been edging out How I Won the Yellow Jumper by Ned Boulting in the Amazon Sports bestsellers list. But as he says in that book, he was riding the 2003 Tour de France préparé, that is to say, doped. By 2004 then, we only had one, and his name was Magnus Backstedt. He was Swedish. The Swede had just won Paris-Roubaix and he lived near Swansea. So for our purposes, we claimed him as an honorary Brit and thrust an ITV microphone in his direction every blessed day until he was sick of us. That happened on about stage 3. Oh, not again, Ned. Yeah, sorry, Magnus. Okay, but make it quick. Thanks, Magnus. Bereft of Brits, and with our only notable rider facing a possible jail sentence in France, we started getting a bit sulky on the sidelines. These were the years, you should remember, of crushing Armstrong victories. We were all getting a bit fed up with him. So we, and my crew, started to call him Larry. Not to his face, you understand. No, we were much more sophisticated than that. We called him Larry behind his back. And it made us chuckle. There was something debunking about it, like a silly nickname for your scariest teacher at school. I think we started calling him Larry because he'd started dating Sheryl Crow, who for some reason I was convinced was called Shirley. And we thought that Shirley sounded just right for Cheryl, or that Larry sounded just right for Shirley. It kind of worked. The problem was there was very real danger of our guards slipping, and one of us actually calling them Larry or Shirley to their faces. And in fact, I came very, very close with Sheryl Crow on the Champs-Élysées in Paris, putting on a handbrake in the middle of the name as I was talking to her, which meant that I extended the initial shh for an unnatural length of time. I got it right in the end. Meanwhile, the rest of the peloton remained obdurately foreign to us. We amused ourselves by trying to pronounce their names with Geordie accents. Juan Antonio Fletcher. Danilo Di Luca. Mario Cipollini. And my personal favourite, and try this at home, you'll enjoy it, Alessandro Patacchi. Don't call him Patacchi, call him Patacchi. You have to kind of swallow it. Of course, over the last years it's all changed. First came Bradley Wiggins, all floppy-haired and a little unconvincing, frankly, on his tour debut. He finished 125th or thereabouts, before tearing it up in 2009 and finishing 4th, as high as any Briton, including the great Robert Miller before him. David Miller has returned, clean, in his new guise. Geraint Thomas and Chris Froome, who might win next year's Tour, have made their debuts. And of course, Mark Cavendish has burst onto the scene. In 2008, he started winning. 4 wins that first year, 6 the next, 5 after that, and last year, 5 again, with the green jersey chucked in for good measure. I've been there. I've been lucky enough to be there for every one of his 20 stage wins on the Tour de France. To look at him, to stand a few feet from him after his triumphs on this grandest stage is a privilege, and it's also a weirdly unsettling experience. Because frankly, anything could happen as he drinks from a can of fizzy orange and eyes you up just before you're about to go live with an interview. He's been hilarious, bellicose, spiteful, forgiving. He's chuckled, and then he's promptly dropped the F-bomb live on air, repeatedly. He's a bright, odd, brilliant, unpredictable, humble, arrogant, funny, terse, wound up, laid back, ruthless ball of contradictions. But what bloody nerves, what raw ability, and what tactical strength of mind. He and I have an odd relationship. Can I have your mobile number, Mark? Sorry, Ned, I don't give it out. Yes, you do. I know, but I don't give it out to you. And the very next day. Can I have your mobile number, Mark? Fuck off. Yes, Mark, I will. I have incidentally got Mark Cavendish's mobile number now. Someone else gave it to me, but I am way, way, way too proud to ever use it. However, as a special offer to you tonight, I can Bluetooth it to anyone in this room for £5.99, which is less than David Miller's book costs on Amazon. And now he's the world champion. He rides for Team Sky. He commands a 7-figure salary, and then some, by the way. He's the sports personality of the year, and his Nike-branded image is plastered all over the arse end of buses. He is Britain's first cycling superstar. And finally, people have stopped asking me why, if he wins all those stages, he's not going to win the Tour de France. So much for the riders. For me and my little bubble of ITV on the tour, the men and women who make the highlights show every night are just as important. I'm often asked by people what my ideal Tour de France would be, and the simple, truthful answer to that is quite banal. Instead of hurtling around the country in a Renault Espace, putting in 16-hour shifts every day for a month, I would like just once to park my arse down on a couch at 7 p.m. every night with a large glass of wine and listen to Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwin and watch Gary Imlach and Sir Christopher Boardman go through their paces, because frankly I've never experienced a tour like that. An average Tour de France day for me and for Liam and Woody, my cameraman and sound recordist, who are, after 9 years on the road, about my closest friends. It begins early. We grab a crap French breakfast from our crap French one-star flea pit hotel. I'm not exaggerating. Pile our stuff in the back of our Renault Espace. £50,000 worth of technical equipment, flight cases packed with lenses and cables, a tripod which weighs as much as a horse and would indeed be as much use in a photo finish at Sandown Park as Bosra bloody Sham, along with our 3 huge suitcases containing clothes for a month in the heat of July in France. And then it's off to the stage start, which might be 50 or 100 kilometres away. Then we battle with the noise and the clamour and the chaos to grab a few fleeting, confused words with the riders of the moment as they head for the start. Then we need to go and get ahead of the race, hurtling towards the finish, but using the off-course route, which might be as much as 350 kilometres in length. And while we drive, I unpack the laptop and, feeling sick and almost about to vomit my horrible shit French breakfast up all over the laptop, I have to script a story. At lunchtime, we get to the finish compound, a vast moving circus of broadcast trucks, vans and cars. We unpack the kit, hunt for our TV truck, off and running. Then I have to feed the material down a satellite to London where it gets edited together. I have to record a voiceover or two and work on another script for the next day, all the while keeping an eye on the race as it unfolds live on the monitor. I watch and write and try and absorb as much as I can. 10 kilometres to go, 5 kilometres to go, time to get cabled up and to go live, get out on the road. I arrive on the tarmac a few minutes before Cavendish, let's just say for example, wins! Then I leapfrog over a fence into the area behind the podium, interview him for the world feed. After that I talk to him again, this time just for ITV. I wrap things up by interviewing other important riders before feeding this to London, packing up and heading off to some hotel or other to talk to people like Jens Voigt or Thomas Verkler about other stuff to be used at a later date. We drive to the hotel, wait for them to finish a massage, and then we do the interview and pack up and piss off to our own hotel for the night. It's 50 kilometres away and we only reach it at 11 o'clock at night. The restaurant is closed. We unpack our car, check in, have a drink, collapse, and do it all again the next day. I wouldn't, of course, I wouldn't change it for the world. Phil and Paul have plenty of critics. It has to be said editorially that Phil Liggett has his blind spots. Most seriously, perhaps, where Lance Armstrong is concerned. And the fact that both Phil and Paul have shareholdings in companies jointly owned by Lance Armstrong has nothing to do with this. But if you'll allow me, that's an argument for another day and possibly with another person, so I'm going to dodge it, apart from saying that thing I just said to you about the shareholdings in the companies. Instead, for me, Phil Liggett's voice is the sound of July. He can, think what you like of him, narrate the mounting excitement of the sharp end of a stage of the Tour de France better than anyone out there. But the most striking thing about Phil, and here I'm quoting from my book, so apologies if you've read this description already. The most striking thing about him, which marks him out as uniquely adapted to the role of the cycling commentator, is the way his brain works. Now, Freudian psychology is getting quite heavy now. Freudian psychology hypothesizes the existence of the Über-Ich. Without this facility, which is a superego acting as an inhibitor to the expression of our id. Without this facility, we would be wildly prone to acts of self-expression. United Sports Nutrition! Which would mean that life would be unlivable, as we would give vent every passing minute to every passing impulse. No matter how much, we would be better served by keeping our thoughts to ourselves. United Sports Nutrition. Is that good enough, yeah? Oh, whatever they're called, yeah. Now, it's safe to say that Phil's Über-Ich is not very high-functioning. At best, its batteries need changing, and at worst, I think the whole thing needs ripping out and replacing. Phil Liggett operates without any interface between what is thought and what is expressed. In most of us, this would be catastrophic. But Phil is a benign man, and the worst that his unconscious can throw up is a mild expression of concern that the weather might turn out slightly more chilly than we anticipated. This is a great benefit to him because he's a cycling commentator. In the beginning was the Word, and before that there was Phil Liggett. You can see him at breakfast commentating his way through his choices at the buffet table. Marmalade perhaps, or some honey maybe, no, I had that yesterday, a little bit of the jam today, and maybe a croissant, but no, not a chocolate one, had too many of them for tea, and besides, need to watch the old waistline. Ah, hello Ned, how you doing old son? Jan Ulrich for today, I reckon, pasta butter. Sometimes you're not sure whether he's talking to you, talking on the phone, thinking out loud, or actually commentating. You have to study closely the nuances to determine whether these are musings or actual communication. Going to be hot today? Yep, for sure. Armstrong to make his move. Bloody iron. Couldn't get the damn thing working. And then the sat-nav packed up last night. Reckon that final climb will splinter them today. Had too much cheese. Woke up bloody thirsty in the night. Think Bushhoff to ledge it today. Don't you, Nick? Ben? Ned? Whatever your name is. It took years for Phil Liggett to remember my name. And then there's Gary Imlach, a unique talent. I think we all agree that. I grew up watching him commentate on American football in Channel 4, and now I have the great honour of working alongside him. And then, of course, there is Sir Christopher of the Boardman, a legend. Watching him go about his day, you can see why he's achieved everything he did. He has a habit of applying an aggregation of marginal gains to everything he turns his hand to. Writing scripts, taking photos, running a multi-million-pound bike business, or simply eating lunch, all of which he is prodigiously good at. He's part of the team, although obviously, on the other hand, he's absolutely not part of the team, since he's actually done the stuff that we just talk about. He will only talk about his own career, though, when asked, and even then reluctantly. And despite this, he is capable of the odd, bold claim to his own prowess. I once asked him, "How many kids have you got, Chris?" 6. Oi! Thank you. I'm done in a minute, then you can all come up and get your prizes. I once asked him, "How many kids have you got, Chris?" 6. A deadpan face. And I've only had sex 6 times as well. I'm just extremely efficient. It took me a while to be able to read his dry sense of humour, and it might take my parents even longer. On my birthday in 2005, the ITV team were all enjoying a sun-drenched rest day lunch together in Courchevel. Tough job. I was moaning about the fact that no one from home had contacted me, not anybody, to wish me a happy birthday. Chris Boardman then put down his beer, grabbed my phone, scrolled through to where it said Mum and Dad, and dialed their bloody number. Before I knew what was happening, I heard him say, "Mr. Boulting, hello, it's Olympic gold medalist and world record holder Chris Boardman here. I'm just ringing to remind you that it's your son's birthday." I imagine my poor old dad standing in his kitchen 1,000 miles away, frowning at the receiver in puzzlement before hanging up. Probably going, "Wanker." Nothing phases Chris, really. He exudes the kind of absolute certainty which surely only comes with having been the best in the world. He generates a kind of density of purpose in his dealings with you, which is matched only by the density of his actual body. Although he is no longer at his racing weight, Chris has by no means gone to seed. He's in good nick. But he stands perhaps an inch or 2 shorter than me. And one day, on one of our ritual runs, we run a lot together, I asked him how much he weighed, guessing it was a little less than my weight. 80 kilos. I was amazed. It was 8 kilos more than me. I looked at him disbelievingly. "I'm just very dense." He opened up a little sprint and left me for dead as we turned for home. Lungs like wheelie bins, the man. And I do not have lungs like wheelie bins. I've gone on for far too long. Triathlon is clearly a party waiting to happen, even if some people in the room have started it already. Britain's achievements, both at the elite and the grassroots levels, suggest that no, not we, that's rubbish, I've never done a triathlon. Both at elite and grassroots levels suggest that you are punching well above your weight. I wish more strength to your fists. To those of you who organise the events, sponsor them, have some influence in their being in the first place, I wish you all the best and keep up your passion. To those of you who race them, keep winning and the rewards will come. I'm told, however, that cyclists, real cyclists, don't think much of your bike handling skills in the triathlon world. Now, this sounds like snobbery to me, I'm sure that your bike handling skills are faultless. Besides, mine are so lacking that 9 years ago I flew over my handlebars in Rotherhithe, cracked my helmet open and smacked my head so hard that I ended up in hospital overnight believing, and I kid you not, actually believing that I had won that year's Tour de France. It wasn't me, incidentally, it was Lance Armstrong. I've checked the records and I didn't even make the podium. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is this. I ride my bike for pleasure. I run for pleasure. I can't say I swim for pleasure because that's the single biggest bloody waste of time ever dreamt up by humankind. But, see, I've mentioned swimming, I told you would. But I do all these things for the love of moving and sweating and suffering, and then most importantly of all, stopping. I'm a fantasist. I only pretend to be an athlete. Working alongside great riders has taught me that we are not cut from the same cloth. I ride, they race. You race, and there's a difference. You've been very patient, and now it's prize giving. A quick end of term hymn, then back to your classrooms to collect your school bags. Have a lovely holiday, and I'll see you all next term. Thank you and goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ned Boulting.